So if you watched our video last week when we went over a Guardrails approach to retirement income planning, in that video we found that we could spend $9,035 a month in retirement with a $1.5 million portfolio. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking, because this is one of the most common questions we get when we build a retirement plan. And that is, hey JB, this looks cool and all, but if I'm doing my math right, $9,035 a month is $108,420 a year in spending, and that's over 7% of my portfolio. I thought I should be only spending 4% of my retirement savings. And my response to that is yes, it's absolutely possible to spend 7%, and in some cases even more than that, which is why I can't stand the 4% rule. So I'm going to be breaking down exactly how this works. But if it's your first time here, my name is John Boyd. I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm the founder of MDRN Wealth. If you like today's content, be sure to like and subscribe. And of course, if you feel like you would benefit from retirement planning just like this, reach out to us at www.modernwealth.com. That's modern spelled with no vowels, wealth.com. So as a refresher, the couple we are working with is Joe and Jill. They are 60 years old, both newly retired, and have 1.5 in pre-tax retirement assets. At full retirement age, they will each receive $3,200 a month in Social Security. But other than that, they have no income sources. Now, in our last video, we talked about how they could spend right now $9,035 a month in retirement, which, if you're doing the math, is over 7% of their portfolio. So how does this happen? Well, the reason why this happens is for your average person, what you need to draw off of your portfolio is not equal across retirement. In other words, the amount you draw off your portfolio may be elevated for a few years, for example, earlier on in retirement, and then later in retirement when Social Security kicks in, for example, your reliance on your portfolio drops substantially. This is a concept known as a retirement distribution hatchet. So take a look at this chart. All numbers have been modified to show their values in today's dollars, just to make it easier to understand. But notice the hatchet shape. You can see the big yellow blade in the years before they have Social Security coming in, and that's the money that they are drawing from their portfolio. They have no other income sources to cover that other than the roughly $9,000 a month that they're spending from their portfolio. But then notice once Social Security starts coming in, the handle of our retirement hatchet starts to form. And that is because if we zoom in here, notice most of our roughly $9,000 a month in retirement spending is now being covered by Social Security. Our reliance on actually drawing from the portfolio starts to decrease pretty substantially. So now to tie this all home, here's just another visual on what this drawdown would look like on their actual portfolio. So you can see here, again, this is in the year 2025. They're both in their 60s. By the end of 2025, they have roughly 1.5 still left within their retirement portfolio. But then as we go along, right, it starts to dwindle down a little bit. Notice that. It goes from roughly 1.5, and then we get all the way to 2032. That's when they start Social Security. They have about 1.2 million in assets at that time. They spent several $100,000 of their portfolio by the time we get there. But then notice something interesting. Notice that as we go along, notice that their portfolio starts to actually grow a little bit. And that is actually something that happens quite a bit with folks who are following this type of distribution plan. And here's why this is. So a couple things to keep in mind. The rate of return that we're assuming on this portfolio is 6.4%, and we're assuming 3% inflation here. So if we are drawing off of their portfolio is still growing in the background, right? All this money is not just sitting in a checking account getting 0%. So even if they're drawing down, let's say over 7% of their portfolio, they're still getting some growth that makes up some ground, which is why it's kind of a steady drawdown until we get to Social Security. And again, that's fine. We can easily sustain it. But then once we get to them drawing Social Security and we do the math on how much they're relying on their portfolio, maybe it's only like 3.6 or 3.5% of how much of their portfolio they actually need to supplement. So now you take that spread, 6.4 minus the new drawdown rate of, call it 3.5, and now the portfolio is incrementally growing every single year, right? That's a big deal. So I want to highlight this because a lot of folks are deathly afraid of actually making this happen. When we try to design a retirement income plan for somebody who wants to retire early, a lot of people want to retire early, but they're scared. And that drawdown that I showed you of them spending several $100,000 of the portfolio scares them. And we've talked about this in other content, but it all comes down to saver's mentality. People go their whole life saving and saving and saving and saving. That switching over to a spend down mentality is horrifying. And so a lot of folks don't want to deal with that transition. So what did they do instead? They continue to work, even though they can easily stop. They continue to work because spending any of their portfolio is terrifying to them. And they also do things like take Social Security early, right? Anything that they can avoid to actually draw down your portfolio is horrifying. So again, I think that's so critical to understand here, that it's absolutely okay to have periods of retirement where you actually, and again, this is a crazy concept, actually spend some of your portfolio. It's okay, because the reality is that you aren't going to have decades and decades and decades of this really high distribution rate. It's only temporary until, in our case here, until Social Security began. Again, that is what the retirement Hatchet distribution plan is all about. So I hope you guys learned a thing or two here. If you're looking to design a retirement plan that looks like this and factors in how much you can actually spend, not just early on in retirement, but all throughout your retirement, reach out to us at www.modernwealth.com. That's modern, spelled with no vowels, wealth.com. I will see you next time.